Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. We're here today for the Student Equity Speaker Series with Shirley Torres. My name is Eric Lara. I am the Associate Dean for Student Success and Equity here at Mount SAC. I oversee all of the equity diversity programs within the campus, and part of our role in Equity Center is to put on these speaker series. So we host maybe 3 or 4 different speaker series per academic year. But before I talk about past speakers, I do want to acknowledge, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees, thank you all for being here. President Garcia here with us today, thank you. We also have Associate Dean of Humanities, Dr. Andy Farron-Sims with us today. And it's an honor to have Shirley here. She is the 2024 Alumnus of the Year. As part of our speaker series in the past, we have had names such as Sonia Nazaro, Lalo Alcaraz, Tazba Chavez, Jolie Proudfits, Bettina Love, Reina Grande, Helen Zia, Anthony Ocampo, Niall DeMarco. And last year, some of you may remember, we had a prior alum of the year from 2015, Rafa Agustin. And if you were here for that event, you may remember a story. I mentioned that Rafa and I went to high school together. We graduated together. He came to Mount SAC. I came to Mount SAC. I took 2 classes maybe, but I went to Cal Poly. And a few months ago, when Shirley came to tour the campus and the center, I was there to meet her, and she looks at me and she says, "I know you." And when you don't recognize them back, that's not a good thing, right? You're like, uh-oh, where does she know me from? And as she's processing, you can tell that she really does recognize me. So that memory is amazing. And it turns out that we also went to high school together and graduated the same year. So you have Shirley, you have Rafa. I'm going to put myself up there as being part of the crew. All coming out of West Covina High School. And I promised Shirley I wouldn't say the year that we graduated. So you can't do the math, but thank you for being here. Earlier today, we always do a private meet and greet with our guest of honor, with specific students or specific programs. And today we had students from the Equity Center, from Rising Scholars, and from the Bridge program. Shirley is a Bridge alum. And there was something that she mentioned. And as educators, we're here, faculty, staff, administrators, we're here to support our students, to encourage them, to motivate them to pursue their education, whatever that may be, certificate, associate's, transfer, and everything in between. And she made a comment, as educators, as I mentioned, our programs, our support programs, our faculty, we want to motivate you, we want to encourage you, but there are times where personal things may be going on in life, at home. You may not come to school motivated every day, and we want to help. And sometimes we question ourselves as to, why aren't you taking that help? Why aren't you coming into the Equity Center? Why aren't you going to the Bridge program? Why aren't you going to Rising Scholars? And we're asking the why. And Shirley made a comment, you need to ask permission to walk with them. So as she said that, I was reflecting, especially as my role, I was reflecting, and that's a powerful statement. We need to ask permission to walk with you. But we're educators, and we want to walk with you, but there's times where you don't want us to walk with you, and that's okay. So for the educators in the room, I just want to remind all of us and myself is we need to be compassionate to allow you to be ready for us to walk with you. And that's something I learned today from this meet and greet. So Shirley, thank you for that. With that, I'm going to transition to our land acknowledgement. I'm going to bring up our director of the First Peoples Native Center, Primavera Reza Nakonechny.
Yes, okay, thank you. So I'm Primavera Reza Nakonechny. My pronouns she, her, ella, because I also speak Spanish, and I have the privilege and the honor of delivering the land acknowledgement tonight. I do want to preface this by saying that the land acknowledgement is a working draft because I'm currently working with folks from the Tongva peoples surrounding the Mount Sac areas to gain input and, oh, thank you, I can hear, yes, thank you. Yes, so the land acknowledgement, I'm currently working with Tongva input in delivering an official land acknowledgement for Mount Sac, okay? But currently, the First Peoples Native Center and Mount San Antonio College recognize that Mount Sac resides on the territorial and homelands of the Tongva and Tataviam people who are the traditional land caretakers of Tongvagar. This land and surrounding lands remain the shared space among the Kitch, Kuya, Luciano, Rumsun, Holon, and Serrano people. We pay respects to the Hanong Vektam, Ahiram, and Iyu Kingkam, our ancestors, elders, and relatives of past, present, and emerging. Mount Sac and the First Peoples Native Center are guests on these lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Primavera. I want to also, I forgot to acknowledge one department and one person, and that is the Office of Foundation and Alumni Affairs, our Director of Development, Marissa Fierro, sorry. So it's a joint partnership with Foundation and Alumni Relations. I will now like to introduce President of Mount San Antonio College, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Welcome to all of you once again. Before I introduce our amazing speaker for this evening, I want to make sure that we recognize the privilege that we have to come together in community, to come together in spirit to learn, to come together in an opportunity to reflect, and to come together and listen to an amazing woman who has contributed and contributes tremendously to the community. We're here together this evening for a reason. And I hope that as you leave this evening, that you leave inspired, motivated, and with tremendous hope. Because that's the last thing we could lose, even when it's very challenging, and I recognize that at times it may be. This institution reflects and symbolizes and acts every day with the priority of continuing to provide hope to all of you. So privileged and honored and inspired to introduce our speaker for tonight, who is recognized as our 2024 Alumna of the Year, Shirley Torres. I'll provide a brief introduction. Shirley is the Chief Program Officer for Homeboy Industries, the largest gang rehabilitation program and therapeutic community in the country. She works to break the cycle of intergenerational violence and trauma by providing healing space for people to increase their choices and chances. She grew up in South Los Angeles, surrounded by gangs and violence. Torrance did not know anyone who chose what they did for a living, let alone who went to college. She is a first-generation college graduate. With patience and support from counselors and professors who believed in her, Torres transferred from Mount Sac to UCLA, where she graduated with a bachelor's degree and then continued on her educational journey to achieve a master's degree from USC. She has been working at Homeboy Industries for 20 years and is in her current capacity leads the agency in strategies to receive, engage, and retain citizens returning from California state and federal prisons, county jail, and juvenile detention facilities. Prior to her current role, Torres served as the Director of Reentry Services, providing leadership and oversight to several departments, including Education and Workforce Development. We are honored to have you here with us tonight. We are grateful, and we look forward to being in spirit and community and learning with you tonight. And we're grateful for this opportunity. I'm really, really thankful to all of you who are here, especially to our students. Thank you for being here. And I ask all of you to please help me welcome Shirley Torres. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, everyone. I first want to start by just acknowledging the time that you took to accept the invitation here and pause and, as President Garcia said, be together in community to honor the rich opportunity we have to have a dialogue around so many of the issues that I'm passionate about and that are at the heart of what keeps us sometimes separated from experiencing true liberation and freedom. Before I start and talk a little bit about my leadership journey and how I got here and how I was once a student here, I wanted to start by showing you a little window into the work that we do at Homeboy Industries and how that work is connected to my life purpose and how my journey began here at Mount SAC. To which we say, don't let them go. Why let them go? The lightness is better than the darkness. As if we don't know that that's the case. At Homeboy Industries, our job is to keep hope alive. But all of that comes from a prayer. The prayer and the invitation to have gang members stop chasing death and honor their life. For the last 20 years, it's been really my life's privilege and honor to pay attention to the swing of the door, to honor that prayer, and to continue to take notes from gang members who do know what they need, who don't need a prescription, and rather than punishing the wound, who need to be afforded the opportunity to heal. As I've been introduced with a major biography, I think a lot about my own story and why this work is not just personal, but it's also political. We live in a country with over 2.1 million people sitting in detention centers. We incarcerate more people than anyone else in the world. And when we look at the data and we think about who gets incarcerated and who joins gangs, we know that that's not an accident, but by design, it's Black and brown young boys of color who don't ever get a chance to be kids. I stand before you as a mother now, and I know that the dream I have for my children is a dream that I want for every single child. I'm Shirley Torres, and I always get complimented on my shoes. But I'll tell you that I came to this campus, and more than my shoes, I know the soles of my feet. I was carried into the world by a woman whose only dream it was to go back to her country and provide shoes for her brothers and sisters. My mom had a third-grade education. She didn't have a chance, but she left the minute she could, everything she knew, because she had this hunger that her children would have a better dream. I stand here and I think about our prayers. And I think about, they say that we stand on the shoulders and the prayers of 7 generations before us. And so 7 grandmothers ago, someone prayed for us to be in this room, to have a voice, to disrupt the kinds of systems that try to keep us in our place, so that we could afford our people and our community the opportunity to heal from things that they didn't choose. The experiences that change our life the most are the experiences that don't ask us for permission. A lot of times they're trauma, but we shy away from admitting that we need help, that we hold secrets and things that happen to us that affected how we see ourselves and our place in the world. But I think together we have the opportunity to honor our authenticity and our stories and do that for other people. And what I've learned over the last 20 years is that when we invest in the healing and the wholeness of folks who never were received in community, not in their homes, not in their schools, not in even churches, who were demonized, then we have the opportunity to create a community in which everyone has a place and everyone has a name and everyone has a face and a story. Today, I know I sit in a room with people who came from different places. I have in the audience people I work with at Homeboy Industries who are honoring their dreams by being students here at Mount SAC. I have colleagues that hold space here at the Student Center for equity and access, so that people who never thought they were going to come home from detention facilities are received and are hopeful about the kind of life they can live, not just for themselves, but for their children. In the audience, I also see my own nieces who, like me, can't say they're the first to go to college, but that are part of a story of generations of family members who want to see them live their dream. And so, again, I'm honored to be here. And as I came onto campus, I think about the implications of my work, but I think about how this place has flourished since I was a student here. And that has to do with each and every single one of you and how you've decided to take space here, how you've decided to advocate for spaces so that more people can come through the doors and continue to help others sing their song. In 1998, I said I wasn't going to say the year, but in 1998, I barely graduated high school. I went to West Covina High School. I was lost. I had grown up in a community surrounded by violence, gangs, drugs. But in 1992, after the riots, we woke up to a neighborhood that smelled like ashes. And it was then that my parents decided that they would do everything they could to get us out of the neighborhood, to offer us a different kind of community. But in that process, something happened. We moved to La Puente, and I lost myself. I was disconnected. I had felt promise, and when I was a little girl, I was always the one that people said, mi hija va a ser una secretaria, she's gifted, she's the smart one. But I got lost along the way. I started to understand that there's things that I had experienced that I couldn't talk about. And there were times in my life where I was chasing death. And lucky for me that once I graduated, I came to Mount SAC. And by accident, I came here with a friend who was trying to get enrolled into a class. And I was recruited into the first pilot, the first summer bridge program designed for first-generation at-risk youth. And that invitation changed the trajectory of my life. For the first time in my life, I met people and I met staff and counselors and young people who mentored me, who showed me a different way, that it was possible, who shared stories of growing up in Bassett and taking space at Harvard University. Those were my professors here at Mount SAC. And the college's commitment to excellence and rigor, but more than anything, community and home and welcoming people, allowed me, the container, to really search for who I was. Who am I? Where do I come from? And what is my dream? And through that program, I made friends and I met people, and a little seed was dropped about what could be possible for me. It was then, and someone shared in a earlier classroom that they went to class, and their first semester they got all A's. And that was my experience here. I became a scholar here. I wasn't the person that just barely made it, that was surviving. There was a paradigm shift, but it all came because I was invited to be part of. I was invited to explore who I was and how I could contribute to the world. And it was at Mount SAC and through this bridge program that I found purpose. I met mentors who said, and there wasn't jobs for us, but they had the power to make decisions to create jobs. And when they noticed that we didn't want to go home, that we were studying in the hallways, they made a space for us here on campus. And it's the first time I ever experienced doing something I loved and saying, wow, I could get paid for this. I became a high school outreach specialist here, where I went back to my own high school to recruit students like myself who were lost and falling through the cracks. And in that, I found the opportunity that wasn't given to anyone in my family or anyone that I knew. And in those early days, I remember thinking, why is living your purpose a privilege? Why is doing something that you love only afforded to certain people in certain zip codes? And how can I be part, a small piece, of holding the door open for someone else? And so I didn't wait to get a degree. I didn't wait to achieve anything. I started to recognize what Father Greg has taught me in the 20 years that I have been under his wing, and that is that we are the accomplishment. We are already exactly what God had in mind when he made us. And we need to honor and believe that. And it's when we develop characters and false identities that we stop being true to who we truly are. I remember, like, when I was young, growing up, my dad used to always say, you know, you either work or you go to school. And one of the things he used to say to me all the time was like, if I had gone to school, I would have been someone. My dad died in 2011, and I remember one of the last things I said to him was, Dad, you weren't just someone. You weren't just anybody. You were my hero. And it is then that I started to think about this idea of education as an opportunity to increase choices and chances so we could honor our life purpose and how we make a living. But I also started to understand how lived experience matters, how your story and what we come from is not just about deficits or what was absent. I actually learned to help other people because I was brought into the world by family who valued helping each other, by the spirit of community, by the spirit of si se puede. And so I stand here today in that spirit saying si se puede, si se pudo, y si se podrá, because we still have a vision that we have to march toward. And that vision is that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. The day will come when our prisons are empty. And the day will come where every child is afforded a childhood. And every kid gets the opportunity to not have to live in this idea that the world is an unsafe and unpredictable world. that's afforded to everybody. And so for me, my beginning and the way in which my spirit was awakened was through this invitation to be part of Mount SAC, to be part of a bridge program. And I took that with me and I started to do the work and I carried it everywhere I went. I transferred to UCLA where I had the opportunity to travel and see the world. And I remember being in Spain and France and thinking, damn, this little girl from South Central is out here experiencing the world and seeing things. And I was always doing it on the shoulders of the people that came before me, the people who didn't have that opportunity. But it was also through my campus experience, through Chicano studies and ethnic studies, that I got to explore my story, that I got to understand, and I got to interview my parents. And I was sharing this earlier. There's a lot of things I didn't know, and there's a culture that we grew up with where you're not supposed to talk about things. And I remember talking to my dad, and he talked about what it was like to come to this country for the first time as a bracero, as contracted laborer, to work the fields, and then get taxed for housing, and be really part of the history of building this nation on endangered slavery. Had I not had this opportunity to interview my father, I wouldn't really know my story. And so, how can we be authentically who we are if we don't honor where we truly come from and take responsibility for understanding what is it that really makes us thrive as community members? And so for me, again, it's an honor to be here. I got the opportunity to graduate from UCLA with honors, and in doing that, I had made a commitment to work and bring students on campus the way I had been brought into campus here and given the opportunity to experience home. And so I was working for the Graduate School of Education doing research, and I had applied for my first PhD program thinking, okay, I'm gonna get my PhD, that's my pathway. I wanted to do research, data, I wanted to go into higher education. But I wanna say that I wasn't ready for the next stage of my life, which was coming to Homeboy Industries. And so I always say Homeboy Industries has been my calling. I didn't know and I didn't want to work there when I first got there. And I say that because my healing is connected to Homeboy. And there's a slogan that says, none of us are well until all of us are well, and I believe that to be true. When I came to Homeboy, I believed that education was a pathway to liberation and true freedom. What I learned at Homeboy is that forgiveness is a pathway to liberation and freedom, and that it's all our jobs to commit to this opportunity that we have to fearlessly fight for the idea that we all are worthy of experiencing happiness and joy and freedom, and we don't all get to do that. So for the past 20 years, I've come to Homeboy, and I came there, and I always say I became a mom at Homeboy Industries before I gave birth to my own children. When I came there, I still thought, I said a few things. I thought success looked a certain way. Success had a PhD. Success had a career. Success didn't have children. Success didn't have a marriage. And I was wrong about that. Now, standing here, I can say to you, success is grounded in generous love. And that matters. And everything else will align in your favor when you are committed to operating from a place of abundance, from a place where all of us can win, from a place where you don't have to compete to be seen. But it takes all of us to commit to this vision of honoring each other, of inviting each other to choose life every day, to stop chasing death. Even for those who haven't been into prison or a gang, we are all part of systems that contribute to either creating more pain or offering hope and relief and safety. And so it's been my life's honor to really be part of that at Homeboy Industries. And I always say more than my title, my biggest job has been to pay attention to the swing of the door and to keep hope alive and to invest in the leadership and development of the people who come there as clients, but then become our staff and hold the door open, and that's contagious. We have the rich opportunity to interrupt violence and trauma, because just like violence is learned behavior, so is love. And so for me, it's just such an honor to be here and get to share a little bit about my journey. I want to say that at some point in 2011, as I will say, life will happen. You know, in 2011 was probably the toughest year of my life. I remember my husband lost his job. And a month later, my grandmother, who is the definition of pure love and taught me how to cry and not be ashamed of crying, passed away. And she was the first person I met that knew that death was coming. And she wasn't afraid. I remember her calling me in and saying, you got to be a mom, you know. And a month after that, my dad died. And that was hard. And I remember being at Homeboy in that time, and the beauty about being community is that it's never one way. It's exquisitely mutual. And I remember a homie named Louis, and he had called me, and he had been one of the first homies I met when I came to Homeboy. And I remember I had asked him, how old were you when you joined the gang? And he said, I was in the womb. And then he shared some of the pieces of his life, and we became, he's my spiritual advisor, and he calls me God's delight. And so Louis had gotten into trouble, and he got caught up, so he went back to federal prison. And when my dad died, the day he died, I got a call from prison. And it was Louis, and my dad had just taken his last breath. And I took his call, and there was a call from, you know, the recording that happens. It tells you you're going to get recorded, and you have a call, and it was Louis, and he was so happy, and I couldn't meet his happiness, you know. And I remember he noticed, and he said, Shirley, what's wrong? You're not yourself. And so I told him, Louis, my dad just passed, you know. And I remember Louis saying, Shirley, if I was your dad, I would be smiling down at you from heaven, and I would say, mission accomplished. Sometimes people ask me why I am still at Homeboy, and the truth is, I'm at Homeboy because I love the people, and I'm beloved by the people there, and we hold each other, and we walk with each other when life happens, and that's the definition of true community. And when you stand together, there's sort of nothing that could topple you. There's nothing that could come at you that you can't deal with and be grounded in your life purpose. And so when my dad passed, I decided, like, we have one life and we don't have forever. And so I decided to go back to grad school. I went to the other school, to USC, and life continued to happen. I started a graduate program because my husband was struggling with employment. I had to also work, so I had to work full time. I completed my first year in grad school, and again, I was working full time, and everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And then, boom, I find out I'm pregnant, and I had just completed my first year. And, you know, it was hard. I see it now as a blessing, but it's like in that time, I'm ashamed to say, like, I was not happy, you know. I was driven again. I was in my pain. I had gone to the place of success looked a certain way. And I had to return back to getting grounded in my life purpose and my reason. And this idea that I tell every homie who walks into my office, which is everything you need to succeed is already in you. And so I remember meeting my counselor there, and this has happened in my educational journey. And I remember she said, you have to quit. Like, you can't do it. There's no way. You're pregnant. You still have 2 years. It's only going to get more rigorous. You have to go full time, and there's no way you can do it. And I share this story because my son, whose name is Phoenix, for a lot of reasons, but I share this story because I remember thinking, you don't know me and you don't know what I've been through, and you don't know how hungry I am to learn more about this so I could be better in my life and more available. And I just didn't take no for an answer. And I remember having my son on Christmas Day. And Christmas Day is a very special birthday because not many people are born on that day, just sweet baby Jesus, you know? And there's another person that I love that I mentioned earlier that was born on Christmas Day. And that's Louis, who I had talked about, who called me when my dad was passing. And I remember when I was pregnant, he said, Shirley, what if God wants us to know that we're family and your son is born on my birthday? And I'm like, Louis, that's impossible. You're born on Christmas Day. You know how hard that is? My due date's not till January. And my son came into the world on Christmas Day in Los Angeles, the same day that Louis was born, to announce to us that we all belong to each other, that we're all one family, and that none of us are well until all of us are well. And we have to continue to honor that journey and spirit forward. The last thing I'll say that's also connected to the last part of the Louis and my son's story is I graduated from USC with my master's degree, and Louis comes running into my office and he says, Shirley, I'm going to be a father again. And I'm like, what? You're going to be a dad again? He's like, yes. And his partner's birth or day of her delivery day was in July, late July. And he's like, Shirley, your birthday's in July. What if... He says, what if my son is born on your birthday? And I'm like, Louis, that's impossible. Like, that's impossible. We already had one miracle. God clearly told us we're family, you know? And plus, I mean, it won't happen. So fast forward, July 3rd comes around. It's my birthday, and he calls me from the hospital. And he says, Shirley, my son was born. And so I share that story to say there's a plan we can have, and there's a journey that we have to be successful and strive and aspire to have degrees behind our name. And that's important because it does increase our choices and chances to earn the kind of livelihood that we deserve and the access to be able to get paid to do what we love. But I share also this story because I do believe we come from a faithful community where God's hand is on everything. And no matter what your plan is, things will align in your favor when you're committed to your life purpose. I had the opportunity to come to Mount SAC, change the trajectory of my life, and hold the door open for others. But I also got to choose making a good career, between making a good career and making a good life. And I'm glad that Mount SAC allowed me to invest and surrounded me with values that allowed me to choose to honor my life purpose and make a good life. And I'm living my wildest dreams because of that. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of my journey. And I'm happy to be here with all of you tonight.
One more time, Shirley Torres. We're gonna we have a few minutes for audience Q&A. I'm gonna invite from the Rising Scholars Program, Janet Cisneros and Carlos Lopez to grab a mic, and they're gonna go out to the audience. As they're doing that, I just wanted to recap a little bit of what Shirley talked about today. She started off by saying that she does this based off of seven generations back. That her grandmas 7 generations ago prayed for her and for us to all be here together in community. She talked about investing in healing and wholeness. Everyone has a name, a face, and a place. She wants, and we want, to see you live your dream. Mount Sac invested in her to explore who she was. Why is living your purpose your privilege? Honor where we truly come from. Can't read my writing. This is when I was crying. Everything you need to succeed is in you. And Shirley, your work, my work, our work as faculty, staff, administrators isn't done. Students, your work isn't done. And with that, as she said, sí se podrá. Thank you, Shirley. We're going to start the Q&A with either Carlos or Janet is going to have the first question, then we'll go out.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Shirley, in your educational journey as a first-gen Latina, has there been a specific experience where you may have doubted the process, and how did you overcome it?
Yes. Hello? Thank you for the question. Absolutely. I think even now in my role as I've, when I get introduced as chief program officer, it's like, oh, that's me, But I will say there was moments where, especially like in my transition from Mount Sac to UCLA, I would say like I really struggled. I struggled to adjust. I had, what people call imposter syndrome. I didn't feel like I belonged there. All of a sudden, I was kind of like, I had become a star student here. I was selected to do this internship in DC. I was a peer advisor. I helped other students on campus. I loved it, and I didn't really want to leave Mount Sac. Like, I wanted to live in the vice president's office and be here forever, But part of when you love someone, they say, so you push them to go. And so I was pushed to get to the next place, and I did that. And when I went to UCLA, I remember getting anxiety and feeling like I can't do this. And it was I had started to the TSP program, the Transfer Summer Program. And I could see everyone they were doing their thing. They were writing. I couldn't write. I remember just feeling stuck. But all of it was really in my mind. My mind started playing tricks on me. And I remember feeling like a little girl, And the first person that I called was my older brother. So I am the youngest of 5. And my older brother he's tough, He doesn't let you feel sorry for yourself. And I appreciate that. Because I remember calling my brother, and I was like, come get me. And my brother had gone to my orientation at UCLA with me. He stood with me. He was pumped up. And when I was a little girl, he was the first one to take us to the library. And he was, my brothers are 10, 12 years older than me. I have 2 older brothers and an older sister. And I remember I called him and I was like, I can't do this. Like, you need to come get me. I'm not smart enough. I don't think I could get this paper done. For the first time, I was going to write like a 20-page paper on like what was happening here. And part of it was like learning the story of why my parents came to the U.S., and interviewing them. And so there was so much emotion, and it was kind of all trapped in me, and I couldn't get it in, even though I was a great writer. And so I called my brother, and I was like, come get me, please. And he said, no, I'm not getting you. And at that time, I mean, it was a long time ago. So it was just there. I didn't have transportation. I lived in the dorms. I didn't have money. I didn't have a credit card like people did. And so I had to bite the bullet. And sometimes, like, we underestimate the power of that phone call. And earlier, when I was talking to people, one of the things that Mount SAC taught me was to ask for help and to get the support that you need. And I think sometimes pride gets in the way. Sometimes you think you're the only one that's struggling. But when I called him, and he just held up the mirror for me, and he said, like, you got this. I'm not picking you up, and you need to buckle down and do it. And I think sometimes it's those phone calls that are like lifelines that make you so grateful for, like, okay, he's not feeling bad for me. He's not letting me feel sorry for me, because he knows I'm like much more than I believe. And having those people in your life and having those relationships in your life are so important. And so I'm grateful for that.
Hello again, Shirley. I just wanted to ask you, can you please explain how important mentorship is in your career and your personal life?
Yes, mentorship is so important. I met my first mentor here on campus, and she didn't know she was my mentor. It was the vice president of student services, Audrey Yamagata-Noji. She gave me my first job here. And I remember looking at her all the time, like how she ran her meetings and how committed she was to making sure that people who didn't historically have access to higher education had access in a relational way. And that mattered. I remember her, again, sometimes you watch people, and to this day, I have a mentor who challenges me. I think there's a season, some people have the same mentor forever. I think there's seasons, but it's important to have people in your life that are gonna help you, again, get anchored in your life purpose, get anchored in what are your values and principles, because life's gonna throw at you what it's gonna throw at you. Things are gonna change, you're gonna evolve and change, but your values and principles are your values and principles, and they can be a compass for you to make decisions. So I have had mentors in my life that have really guided me and been there for me, but not just for one thing. So it wasn't just like, I believe in life mentors, and the definition of a life mentor is someone that allows you to discover your gifts and your strengths, and again, move toward your vision for your life. And I've been blessed that I've had several women in my life that have been mentors for me, and Father Greg, who has mentored me for 20 years. But I also believe in mentoring others on the way up. And so, again, nothing that is magical is one way. So I think it's important to not wait to get to a place, but always bring people with you. And that's always been instilled in me since I was a kid.
So we have time for 2 questions from the audience. After those questions, there is going to be about 30-minute meet and greet with Shirley right to my right, to your left. So you will have time to ask questions in person, take pictures, whatever it may be. But we will take 2 questions from the audience. One right there in the orange.
You got a favorite book?
Yeah, I have my favorite book was handed to me by a mentor, and it was The Alchemist. I don't know if you're familiar with The Alchemist, but it really, like, and this is why I think exposure is important, and we try to have, like, even at Homeboy, like, it's influenced me. Like, there's a sphere of influence we have that is based on what we're exposed to, and so leaving our comfort zones, and, like, for me, traveling allowed me to change and see, like, how big the world is, and, like, my place in it. And yeah, that book inspired me to travel, explore, to do things that were uncomfortable. and again, and to stay grounded in like who I was and who I was becoming.
Okay, okay.
We'll take one question from this side. Go ahead, Dodgers right there.
Is it work? Yep.
For the Homeboy Industries, is that like a live-in program as well, or is it just like for employment and
Yeah,
helping
it's not a residential, we don't have housing now. We have a plan for housing in the next 5 years. So we are developing right now. Again, we've evolved over time. You know, Father Greg's been doing this for 35 years. I've been there for 2 decades. And I think the slogans tell our story. Like, it started with jobs, not jails. It's actually started with jobs for the future, jobs, not jails. And then when I came, it was nothing stops a bullet like a job. And I always say to G is Father Greg, but I always say to G, like, we should have had, instead of a period, ... at the end. Because the job is the beginning, but it's not what people do there. It's what happens to people who thought they were enemies when they walk through the doors. And it's what happens to all of us that witness that kinship that grows. And it's the dreams and the seeds that get planted there about healing from our wounds that allow us to flourish. And so now we're a one-stop center. We have 3 campuses. We have a youth center. We have our main headquarters, and we have a Homeboy Art Academy. So what we're trying to figure out is how do we create sanctuaries throughout Los Angeles and more. And again, we have, in the video, we had 6 social enterprises. We now have 13 businesses. We have a college-going culture, so we have actually lots of trainees that are in college. Some have gotten their master's degree. We actually have one young lady that I met when she was in juvenile detention camp. And I mean, we used to take guns from her. And she just got accepted to UCLA Berkeley Law School. Berkeley Law School, I said UCLA. She got accepted to both schools, and she decided to go to Berkeley. So she got into UCLA, and which are the top schools. And again, I don't think that's a marker of like, you know, but it says something about what happens when you stand with the most demonized and marginalized, how when you invest in their healing, they have the potential to live their dream. And she wants to be a lawyer, and she wants to represent people in the courtroom because she didn't really have someone who represented her in the times that she needed a voice for her.
Thank you all. Again, we're going to have time for questions, pictures, Q&A, meet and greet here in a couple of minutes. But next, I want to bring up Marissa Fierro, the Director of Developments.
We just want to say thank you, Shirley. I'm fortunate to be in a position that we can put a spotlight and elevate members of our community, such as Shirley Torres. I feel fortunate that I've been able to escort her to a number of talks, because I imagine that I'm not the only one in this room that feels seen every time she speaks. And I'm just really grateful that she has accepted this award so graciously. And of course, she's really going to have a big celebration during commencement is when we're going to bestow the the award upon her, and they'll share a video, and she will also be doing her speech. So anybody that will not be graduating this year, but you're welcome to view, that'll be streamed live. So thank you so much. We do have some gifts because we know how much Mount Sac means to you. Thank you.
I just want to say, I mean, Marissa has been like really like, I mean, such a phenomenal and welcoming and warm person. And thank you for how you've received me here. And I want to say, like, Homeboy, we say is a place of second chances, but it really is the first chance for a lot of people. And Mount Sac was that for me. Like, when I think about, again, like my early journey, I loved school. And something happened to me where I got detached from that. But it allowed me the second chance to continue to honor and become that scholar and that person and now do the work that I do. So this was my second chance. So I want to thank you all for making this place the place that it is for people like me. Thank you.
Thank you all once again. That concludes our program. We will meet right outside.